This is Fearless Leadership with Brendan Keegan, a production of Forbes Books. Conversations with leaders who provide valuable, candid insights from their journeys and share their secrets to what made them successful and fearless.
Hey there, I'm Brendan, and this week you're getting a double shot of fearless leaders, Andy Shaughnessy and Danielle Carter, the co-CEOs of ExpressIt Delivery, a company that was launched in their childhood living room over 30 years ago. ExpressIt is made up of hundreds of experienced delivery professionals and specialists that provide same-day delivery and trucking services to clients all throughout the Northeast. Andy, welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you.
And Danielle, thanks for joining me today as well.
Thank you, Brendan. We're happy to be here.
So Andy, let's start with you, and let's start with something that's pretty obvious to me is ExpressIt is a well-respected same-day delivery service that is 100% women-owned and managed. So for folks not familiar with the industry you're in, how uncommon is this?
Yeah, it's pretty uncommon. With stats sort of not readily available, but there are estimates out there just to give an idea. Less than 1% of logistics company CEOs are women, and then less than 10% of all C-suite positions are held by females. So, I guess you'd have to sort of venture a guess that when it comes to ownership of the logistics companies, they're similarly just as low. But even from like a personal sort of our own experience, we've been at this for 10 years now, and we've had a lot of contacts through networks and competitors and events, what have you. And honestly, there's 3 women that stand out in comparable situations to Danielle and I in our business that are owners and run their company. And 2 of them actually have since sold to male corporations, and one's still going strong in New England. But when we talk about our competitors or we're going after business, it's never another female-owned company, that's for sure.
Well, so this is just so special, Andy, to know that you're in the trucking, logistics, delivery business, and you're the 1%. So just, super honored to have time with you today, Andy and Danielle. And so Danielle, you and Andy have been in the logistics and delivery business for over 20 years, but your family began doing this back in the 80s, in 81, I believe, when you started. Can you take me back to those early days?
Sure. Interestingly, our dad started as a taxi driver and in Boston for Red and White Taxi. And when our parents got married, a friend of his had given him a small courier company. I think it had 1 client, maybe 2. And from there, our dad brought on family members and friends, and he grew the company. Back in the 80s and the 90s, it was exactly what people would think when they think of couriers, bikers, walkers, downtown Boston, delivering packages for law firms, financial companies, to and from courthouses. So from there back to, up to 2012, when our dad passed away, that is when Andy and I came in and took over the business. So with the help of 2 of the original management team members, we stayed on, and from there we evolved to larger accounts, trucking, as you mentioned, and our clients evolved to manufacturers, hospitals, life science industries. We went from mostly that downtown rush delivery business to more rooted scheduled delivery logistics company. And so that was sort of the beginning days, and that's sort of how we got to where we are today.
Wow. I can only imagine how proud your dad would be today, seeing the 2 of you running this as co-CEOs, his 2 daughters doing this, as well as kind of being a leader in what we talked about as a male-dominated industry. So, Andy, let me come back to you, and let's stay on that family theme, if you will. The complexity of running a family business, kind of take me behind the scenes, and is it drama? Is it regular? There's like this TV show out there, Succession, and I don't know if I were dad, I'd want to turn it over to any of those kids. I mean, it's a pretty wild show. A little boar on the floor over there. So let's come to you. What is it like with your sister running a family business?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I absolutely love that show. And I'm proud to report we're not nearly as dysfunctional as the Roys.
Well, thank you for that. Thank
Yeah,
you for
yeah,
that.
yeah. So
Because if you had said it's as dramatic as that, we might have just been calling the show quits right there.
no, but honestly, the in terms of succession, and not so dramatic, but in those early days of the transition, which was 10 years ago, we did have our fair share of extended family drama that probably would fit in with the show, but we can sort of leave that up room for interpretation or up to your imagination, if you will. But we always said, taking the drama or the issues that we faced in those early days, we would do it again the same way, and the two of us, it forced us to act quick, make smart decisions, work together, and really become a team. And funny enough, when we had a sort of a conversation a little over 10 years ago now with our dad, he said, I can't wait to see what you two are going to do in 10 years. And so when you said he must be so proud, like, I will never forget that conversation. And that was his statement, right? So it's like, so when it comes to family, and our mom's a part of this, and we're sisters first. And so the drama and all of that stuff, we decided early on that we were a team and that we were going to handle decisions as a team. So whether we were on the same page, and that's great, or whether we need to work to get on the same page, whether we bring in our mom, a sounding board, bring in an outside advisor, family-owned businesses, and the drama, that stuff is real. But we're proud to not let it really affect us in our relationship, and I think that's what has sort of made us successful as well.
Yeah. Before moving on, Danielle, what do you think? What is it like working with your sister in a family-owned business?
Andy hit the nail right on the head, which is that we're sisters first, and I think that for me, there's a close to 10-year age gap for us, and I think that that's another benefit. I have a little bit of an older. I've been here a little bit longer, not in the company, just on Earth. But I think for me, I always sort of look at Andy as she's always going to be my little sister, and I treat her that way, and it's a lot of love here. So I think we just came from a place where if we're going to go for this, it's us first. It's our relationship. She's one of my best friends, and I think that that's so important, and that's not going to change. No matter what transpires in the business.
So it's really neat. And I've had a chance to know both of you over the last, I think 5 or 6 years now, probably half the time that you have been running this. And I think a few things that you said that really, using your term, Danielle, hit the nail on the head, or Andy said sisters first. And then I think you said friends. And I think, that probably is what makes the drama melt away, is that you realize it's a business, but it's your sisters first and your friends. Now, Danielle, I am going to say that when you said there was a 10-year age gap, I wasn't going to, go for the jugular and ask who was older, but I think you gave that away by calling Andy your younger sister. So
yeah, and I'm not, age is just a number, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay if you had said it first, Brendan. It's okay.
Well, I know this is a podcast, but I'm confident that if this were a show, people wouldn't believe your age if they could see you. So,
Oh, thank you very much.
So Danielle, you mentored under your dad, the original owner of ExpressIt Delivery, and as we talked about, from the taxi cab to the delivery, were there any key lessons or quotes or anything that you use to this day that you channel, Michael Shaughnessy on a daily basis? Is there anything that really you bring to the business or you think about on a daily basis, weekly basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of Andy and I's personal life is definitely, we were mentored from him. And I think a lot of that comes into our day-to-day lives. But with regards to the business specifically, I think for us, learning from our dad, whether it was the beginning days of just osmosis and hearing it, then working under him, it was how important customer service was. It was the top priority. And I think with that was being honest. And for us, we learned right away, we never say we can do something if we can't do it. And I think Andy and I probably took that a step further, which, we will probably get into at some point, but we also don't say we can do something if we can't do it right. And so then with regards to just continued to be honest with, if anything happened during the delivery process, whether it was a vehicle issue, weather-related issues, we learned right away that we communicate with the client. And I think Andy and I probably took it again another step further, and we probably over communicate with customers, but we've learned that from our dad. With regards to quotes, I think the only thing that really sticks in my head, and Andy probably would agree, is he always would say to us, this business isn't glamorous, girls. And I think what we understand now was he was so right, not just running the business, but I think just the male side of it. There wasn't any female leaders out there. We didn't have a lot of people that we could go to and talk to. And it was almost in some ways, he was preparing us for what was to come. And so it isn't glamorous, and we are one of the only sort of female, leaders in this industry, but it doesn't mean that we can't put our own stamp on it.
Well, let's face it. I mean, this is a trucking and delivery business. This is a dirty fingernail business. This isn't like highly manicured, shellacked, nails running around delivering these things. So I think your dad gave you some really well-grounded advice there as to what you were stepping into. But let's take that, and now let's talk a little bit about your brand. So Andy, a number of years ago, you launched a rebranding initiative. You included a formal brand element, a website redesign, a whole marketing campaign. And I know that you had been in media before that, and we've talked about how your company is just a little different than a lot of the other trucking and delivery logistics companies out there. So can you tell me a little bit about how your media background played into it, and it being a family-owned business and woman-owned? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, because I do think, it definitely sort of helped big picture. My time in media, my entire career was specifically sports media. And so my approach in whatever role I was doing at that time, it was a creative role, but it was a focus on telling the stories, right? And relating the players to the audience. You don't have to understand the complexity of a play, or you don't have to know the stats to be a fan and to fall in love with the game, right? That was always my thing. It's like, I even said in an interview, I think my desire is to make people fall in love with hockey, even though I can't tell you like the ins and outs of back checking, whatever have you, right? So then when we talk about ExpressIt, the approach was the same. Danielle and I weren't going to sell like X's and O's sales strategy. We weren't really going to go in there and rattle off on-time delivery percentage and specific numbers, although that's part of the conversation, but that didn't come natural to us. It wasn't genuine. So when we talk about our brand, that's what we wanted to incorporate, which was the focus on our unique situation. Our family-owned, we're women-owned. We have such a different perspective of what customer service should be and what kind of a different partner we can be. So again, without using the standard selling technique, we wanted the brand to stand out and to be different. We had a chance to do things differently. We still do, and that's sort of what we hold on to today.
Now, when I look back at your media background, I believe you were with NISN, New England Sports Network, weren't you?
Yes. So I was with NISN first, and then the NHL.
And then the NHL. Wow. So a couple changes up there in the Boston area with the Bruins going on. You recently fired your coach, and your longtime center, Patrice Bergeron's mulling retirement. So
I know.
We'll save that for another day, and I'm certainly not going to talk about your Celtics right now. But so you were in sports, you were highly successful, you were in the media industry, and you came back to your family business. What inspired that change?
So towards the end, Danielle mentioned our father passed away in 2012, and so it was July. Towards the late spring, I was in New York at the time. I was at the NHL, and I was coming home a lot because obviously it was towards the end of his life. So every trip put things into perspective, both personally and professionally. Although the circumstances were so sad, and at that time we didn't know what we were going to do with the company. It was a conversation. It was Danielle, me, and our dad, and it was, what do you guys want to do? What should we do here? And so every conversation, it just became more and more clear, this was an opportunity to be home, to be with family, to continue what he started, and then ultimately, and I've said this from the beginning, my biggest fear was trying this and failing, but that fear of failure was so heavily outweighed by the fear of regret that, with each trip home and with each conversation with Danielle and our mom and our dad, it was, no, this was absolutely the right move. So I absolutely do not regret leaving that career. I miss it at times, but now I can be a fan and make her come to games with me and enjoy it in a different capacity.
Well, so I think you just said something that really hit me and I think was really profound. You said fear of failure versus fear of regret, that you would rather fail and face that fear than have maybe stayed in New York, worked with the NHL, and had this fear of regret that you couldn't have gone back on. So, a big congratulations to you, Andy, for kind of just, being authentic right now in the moment. And Danielle, a minute ago, you talked about honesty and really just saying, yeah, you stepped into this role knowing that you were fearing that you might fail. Your family business might not be successful where this wasn't something that, you had maybe initially planned on, but you chose to do that over the fear of regretting, maybe for the rest of your life or for some period of time, kind of carrying your father's business on. So really big kudos to you for facing that fear. And clearly it's 10 years later and your company is thriving. It's growing. And Danielle, I want to get into that. You've overseen the geographic expansion, from Boston to all across New England and into New York. And walk us through, how have you been able to do this successfully over the last 10 years while maintaining that customer service that you talk about that's at the epicenter of the legacy of the business? How have you been able to, expand that and in a way get Andy back to New York again?
Well, that I never thought about that, but that's true. I think it's probably two-part answer to that. I think the first is that early on or midway, we sort of adopted a crawl, walk, run approach. And I think that we try to take on exactly what we know we can handle. And so although we were, I don't want to say afraid, it was out of our comfort zone to go to New York. It goes back to what Andy said. It was, we were willing to do anything and to try anything. But we like the idea of knowing that when we say we can do something for a client, that we're going to do it well. So whether it's, we can come, but we're going to take this part of what you need and then we'll, go into this part. It's just making sure that we can do it right. And I think the second part would probably always be having the right team behind us and with us. And so we hire people who share the same drive that we have, both to grow the business, but also they share our core values, and our vision for the company, whether it's with the client and, like you said, our customer service, or the culture that we've created with our drivers, to make sure that they know that they're appreciated with Andy and I, with the team, with everyone. So I really think it's going at our pace, knowing we're going to say yes to something we're going to be successful at, and also having the right people with us. We couldn't do it alone.
No, I mean, and you're well over 100 drivers from what I understand. And Danielle, you had said that you and your sister treat your employees like family. That's come up here on this podcast today. The last couple of years, it's been a challenging environment. And, how is that bond reinforced while we've been going through this pandemic and supply chain issues and, just being able to see your teams and be virtual and your teams are all over New England and New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And so they're all over. So walk me through, how have you been able to keep that family culture, that bond with a distributed workforce during a pandemic? How have you been able to do that?
You're right. And right from the start of the pandemic, we were deemed an essential business. And so we never closed. Our team of drivers went to work every single day. So we recognized, both Andy and I as the owners, that we had to, and back to sort of what our dad instilled in us, but we needed to over communicate with them every single day, every single week. They needed to know that we cared about them. We were right ahead of it before masks were even mandated. We were making sure our teams had masks, hand sanitizers, sometimes even going against some of our own leadership team. But Andy and I knew that they needed to know that we cared about them, like a family. And, there's an example where right in the early days, I had to be in a warehouse, and it was right in the beginning. And I was there. I was right alongside the drivers, picking and packing. And, we needed to be leaders that they needed to know it wasn't business as usual, that we had to be better as owners, and we wanted to be. We really needed to make sure that they knew we cared. And I think we did a really good job of that.
Your statement that you just made, Danielle, talks a lot about the pandemic. Is you said we needed to be better. It's just,
Yeah.
I think during the pandemic, I think as leaders, as fearless leaders, I think if you did what you were doing before, it just wasn't enough anymore.
No.
The pandemic just demanded more of all of us as leaders, as parents, as sisters, as brothers, as family members. So I think you said it well. We just needed to do better. So that's great. So Andy, I in getting to know your company over the last number of years, we've touched on this a little bit on our show today. One of your company's mottos and ethos is it's driven by old-fashioned values and a simple commitment to we do what we say. Has that been there since day one, or is that something that you brought with your sister to the company? Walk us through, how has that always been a part of it, or has it always been a part of it?
Yeah, no, that we inherited that statement. and like Danielle said, we do what we say and do it better, right? We're in the service industry. So if you don't do what you say, then you're really not going to have many people to sort of make that promise to. Repeat customers, they're everything. And that actually client retention is something that we're truly proud of. We've had a couple clients that we've had for decades. And we have clients that we've grown with tremendously. We say that we're an extension of our clients, and we believe that that's what being a true partner is. So our number one job is we're delivering. We're business to business delivering. So whether it's to their customers, their vendors, their partners, whatever it is, our goal is to make them look good and to take the headache away. And so when we're successful on that, they're successful. And so then it's just, that's how we grow together. And we love sharing those stories, even to like prospective customers or clients. Like when you sign on with ExpressIt, it's a different kind of partner. We're going to do what we say. We're going to go above and beyond to get it done, because that's what we've been doing it since 1981. So it works, and we know how to do it.
Well, I think a business like yours, I had a similar business at one time, not delivery, but it was service related, going out, and we used to say you're only as good as your last service call. So
Right.
I would imagine with your deliveries, even with clients you've had for years, you're really only as good as your last delivery. And do you continue to offer that value prop of when you say it's going to be there, it's there, and great job for the last decade on honoring on that promise. So Danielle, here's a tricky one for you. I want to kind of maybe get off of some of the business questions and ask you a question in that, how do you, as a co-CEO, how do you measure your own performance at work?
For me, it's probably less about winning new business or the growth, although that is amazing and that is what we want. I think, but to measure my own performance, it's how am I doing as a leader? How am I doing as a coworker? And I think it's, I often ask myself, or I want to see how I feel when I walk away from a conversation with someone. How did I make them feel? So with everyone at the team, do I listen enough? Am I communicating enough? And do they feel appreciated? So I think it's my personal relationships within the business, how we talk and get through situations and make decisions as a company. I think that's probably how I measure my performance. it's just me as a leader in the business, but also just making sure that, can I do better? Can I listen better? Did I not really hear what someone suggested or whatever it might be? But I think that's how I measure myself in this company.
That's excellent. And Andy, no two leaders are created equal. Every leader is different. I'm different from you. You're different from your sister. So how does that work when you have two CEOs? And how do you identify each other's strengths and weaknesses? And how do you divide things up?
Yeah, so I think that I guess what could be considered a disadvantage is actually an advantage for Danielle and I, which is, we had never been business leaders before we started this 10 years ago. So we learned at the exact same time, and we're still learning how to be leaders and how to be better leaders. So there was no pre-existing behaviors or styles that we were trying to implement and force one another to do. So by learning together, just organically, you can sort of figure out someone's strength, someone's weakness. And in each situation, it sort of just comes out, because again, we don't have like a one-track mind of this is how we're going to lead, this is how we're going to do it. It's, well, we got to figure it out. So let's figure it out together. And my perspective is a little different than Danielle's perspective, but it helps us, again, get on that same page. We've tried to split up roles and, you take this, I'll take this, and we kind of do, right? Like if it's like, I'll take on the lead on the marketing, Danielle will take lead on operations, but ultimately we always come back to any decision. We make it together. And I think just, again, like those unique perspectives and our strengths and weaknesses of our characters sort of create those perspectives. I think that's how it balances out for us. And I don't know if that would work for everyone, especially two co-CEOs, but it certainly works for us.
No, that's great. That's great. So any parting comments, any parting words that you would give to any of our listeners out there, whether they're entrepreneurs starting to think of starting a business or they're in a family business or they might they might consider going into a family business, or women out there starting a business. Any parting comments either of you would like to make?
I mean, just from what I've gone through, I think I would say go for it because, like Andy said, the fear of regret was big for her. And I think for us, we had already lost so much by losing our dad that it was a go for it moment. And whatever your, sort of is leading you to that decision, or maybe you're there and, you're trying to cross a finish line. But I mean, for me, I've learned a lot, and I think it's just go for it. You figure it out. We have figured it out along the way. We still are, but if Andy and I can do what we've just did, anyone can do anything. Like, it's just go for it.
Yeah, and our dad used to say, honestly, he would say, you can do whatever you want. It just comes down to how hard are you willing to work. That couldn't be more true. Sky's the limit. Anything's possible. And Danielle said it great. Just go for it.
So thank you. So a little bit about Andy Shaughnessy and Danielle Carter for our listeners out there. This dynamic sister duo has defied all odds in what we described as a male-dominated industry by skyrocketing their small family-owned business that their dad passed on to them to be an industry leader today in just a few short years and less than a decade. I think you've had a chance to see today that their passion and drive are rooted in their love for creating meaningful partnerships and helping other businesses achieve their goals. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about ExpressIt Delivery and how they can help your business grow, please visit expressitdelivery.com or reach out to Andy and Danielle directly on LinkedIn. And the last thing I think that we heard from our dynamic duo today is from Danielle, go for it. And from Andy, face your fear of failure and beat your fear of regret. Thank you, both of you, and have a great year this year. And I hope the holiday season is the peak of all seasons for your business.
Thank you, Brendan. So great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And that wraps up today's episode of Fearless Leadership. If you enjoy the show, and I hope you do, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get my new shows when they drop. Also, if you do have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more folks like yourself can discover the show. And remember, until next time, have the courage to fail and the faith to succeed.
This has been Fearless Leadership with Brendan Keegan. If you want to learn to live and lead fearlessly, go to brendanpkeegan.com. Fearless Leadership is a production of Forbes Books.